Hello, welcome to Jim's Allotment Garden. There's plenty coming up in this episode, so let's get on with it. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago I explained that this second row of raspberries here, I'm going to take them out and basically replace them with fruit trees, and I've actually managed to get 3 fruit trees this week. I bought them from Wilco's and they were quite a snip. They were only £3.99 each. What I've managed to get is this dessert apple, Spartan, which is like a red sweet apple. I've also got a pear tree, which is you know, like an eating pear, and I've got a cherry tree, which is the one that's going to go into the middle. So there's a cherry tree. All of them are £3.99, so I thought, you know, for a fruit tree they were really good. But obviously the roots, they're just in a sort of bag at the moment. So what I've done is I've mixed up some Miracle Grow compost, about 50-50 with some earth from the allotment. And what I'm going to do is pot them up in these 12-inch pots here, so I can keep them, or at least start them off in the greenhouse. I'm going to, well, they're a bit tall, but I'm going to try and do my damnedest to get them in the greenhouse, so I can you know, sort of start them off in there. So, because the reason I'm putting them in the pots rather than straight in the ground is, as you know, under the ground here I've got sandstone, and obviously what I don't want to do is plant a tree where there's only really 2 foot of ground, you know, 2 foot of earth. So what I need to do is dig a big hole. This is obviously after pulling all the raspberries out. Dig a big hole, and then I'm going to have to break through the stone so the tree can get its roots down right into the ground. So what I need to do is sort all that out before I put the trees in, but what I don't want to do is leave the trees in the bags here. So what I'm going to do now is pot these trees up into the pots. I'm going to take them out of these bags and pot them up with this, and I'm also going to put some fungi with them, which I'm going to explain. Okay, so in Mother Nature Part 7, which is coming up shortly, I'm going to be talking about this, which is mycorrhizal fungi, and this is basically a product which you can put with your shrubs and trees, etc. And what it does is it collinates the roots of the tree, and it helps the tree to basically get minerals and everything from the soil. I'm going to explain this in more detail shortly, but I'll be pouring a bit of this in with the trees. Okay, so I've taken the tree out of its bag, and it was basically wrapped up in some black plastic, and basically what I've done is I've shook the roots out to get them spread around the pot so they can absorb the water, etc. And I'm just putting about 5 millilitres of the stuff into the bottom of the. That's all you need. It's basically like a teaspoonful. That's all you need. And as you water that, basically that will of course start to grow, and the mycorrhizal fungi will then collinate the roots of the tree, and you know, and help it grow and get the nutrition from the ground. So all I need to do now is just backfill that in, firm it all down, give it a bit of a shake to make sure there's no air pockets in there, and then give it a bit of a shake, and then that'll keep. Obviously, if I was to be planting these for any length of time, obviously I'd choose a larger pot than this, but because they're only going to be in there for a month or so whilst I'm sorting out the ground for them to go, that will be more than sufficient to keep the trees happy. So there you go, that's the 3 trees all potted up. I've just skimmed just a little bit of water just to make sure they've got some, because obviously the roots will be quite dried out because they've probably been bagged up for a few weeks now. I've had to take the top out of the cherry tree because that just wouldn't fit in the greenhouse, and I'm going to trim them down anyway when they go in. But so that's the trees ready, and they'll stop in here for a few weeks until I can get the ground ready outside to put them in. So the fruit trees, as I've already explained, are going to be going down the frame where the raspberries are at the moment, or at least the second frame where the raspberries are. And what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks is extending up the poles. I'm going to extend them about another foot, 18 inches, and I'm going to be running wires across, not only above the frame which is there at the moment, but also in the middle as well. And what I'm going to be doing is training these fruit trees that we've potted up along the wires, and this is basically called pleaching. And basically what you do is you grow the tree up, and then you get horizontal cordons or branches to be trained in a horizontal form along the wires and the poles. And this is useful quite a few different ways. Trees always fruit on branches going horizontal. Any vertical branches on a fruit tree will not fruit, or at least you might get just one or two right at the top. But basically, the more horizontal the branches are, the better. And in times gone by, a Victorian trick used to be to plant a tree at 45 degrees, so the branches were always fruit bearing, if you like. So basically, what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks is clearing that all out, digging out the holes and preparing the ground, putting the trees in, and then basically what I'm going to be doing is basically bleaching the trees across that framework. Excuse me, and forming like a sort of fan shape. Going across the frame, and basically what you do is you bend the stems or the branches down to create the horizontal cordons, and you do that in sort of early springtime, and you tie them down loosely, and then as time goes on you tighten them so you get them perfectly level, and then you cut back any lateral branches on there, the side branches, down to 3 leaves. So basically you want them to grow along. If any come out, you just cut them back. And then after a while that they've been there, you actually cut them back at the end of the year, and then basically they will grow again, apart from the end tips, because what you want to do is get them to continue to grow along the framework. It's very similar to growing the vine, how I've explained to grow the vine in the past. And then again in the winter you will trim them down, and the tree will always try to grow sort of vertical branches out, because that's basically what the tree's trying to do. It's searching for the light. But basically what you need to do is sort of keep on it a little bit and trim them right back, so the tree carries on growing sideways rather than upwards. And then, as I say, these sort of vertical branches, you let them grow to 3 leaves and then take the top off, and that's where you'll get your fruiting bud. So that's what's going to be happening in the next few weeks, and as I do it, I'll explain in more detail how I'm doing it and why I'm doing it, and I'll show you how to train the trees across. Not only the trees, I'm also going to be putting in the Josterbury bushes, and they're also going to be trained along the framework, and also the blueberry bushes, I'm going to be training them along the framework. So, from the side it's going to be quite narrow, but from the front obviously it'll be like almost like a hedge, if you like, like a complete. So I'll be having the 3 trees, and then in between the trees and at the ends I'll be having the Josterbury bushes, which are a mixture between blackcurrant and gooseberries. It's a hybrid between the two, if you don't know what Josterbury is. And then obviously the blueberries will be in the middle, just sort of growing up between the 3 trees. So that's what's coming up in the next few weeks. But I just wanted to quickly explain what I was going to do with it and the thought pattern, so you can have a little sort of research yourself if you fancy doing that. You can actually make them a lot lower. There's this thing called step over trees. I don't fancy doing that because the trees are quite close to the ground. You can get quite a few bugs and problems with the trees, so I'm going to grow them sort of, I don't know, sort of 5-6 foot high, and then sort of across. So the fruit's sort of at sort of high to to sort of pick myself. Okay, so to carry on with the Mother Nature set of clips, today what I'm going to be talking about is when you've got waterlogged areas and you've got compacted soil, and basically you've got a high content of clay within the ground. Now, most allotments will suffer from this, and most gardens. You will always get a sort of low-lying area of the garden or the allotment. and what happens is over time, when you get the rain will wash down the silt and the finer particles within the soil, and it'll gather in one particular area, and this is where you get clay. And obviously, you know, the sort of the bottom of river beds and stuff like that are always covered in clay, and it's basically the same kind of system which happens in your garden. The water will drain into a given area, and then the ground will become sort of clay, sort of fine particles. And there's various ways you can get around this, and you'll have seen in previous videos when I was dealing with, at the end of last year, I was dealing with the bottom end where I'd got the sweet corns growing, and I'd also got the beans growing. The ground there had become very hard, and in the dry weather the ground had cracked, and basically the sweet corn didn't grow very well last year because of it. Because if you can't get any air into the soil, you can't water them properly. The ground becomes quite hard and solid, and the roots aren't able to form properly, and therefore you don't get healthy plants and you don't get the yield that you're looking after. That you're looking for. So there's plenty of ways of dealing with clay soil, and the first thing you need to do is check the pH of the soil, because normally when you've got sort of clay soil, it's typically quite acidic, because you get a lot of the acids or whatever washing in with the ground. And what the first thing you need to do is sort of neutralise that acidity. So anything above sort of 6 pH, if you get yourself some universal indicator paper, and put some soil in a pop bottle or a jam jar, and then shake it up in some water, and then let it settle, and the water in there, ideally use distilled water, but tap water will do. Really, you're only getting an indication of what it is. Dip the universal indicator paper in there, and that will give you a measure of what the acidity of the soil is. If the soil is quite acidic, the best thing you can do is apply some lime to the ground. Don't get any lime, there's lots of different types of lime. What you need to do is get garden lime, and you can buy this in 1 kilo bags up to sort of 25 kilo bags. But you apply that to the ground, dig it in well, and that will neutralise the soil, and that will help with the clay to a degree. But what you need to do is redistribute or displace those really fine particles which is causing it. Another thing that can cause clay soil is a very high concentration of calcium, and this is obviously from eggshells and all other sorts of things. But basically, you can get a lot of calcium in the ground, which also causes the ground to go clay. If that's the case, you need to start digging stuff in, which is the other thing you need to do anyway. So what you need to do is get yourself some good organic material, you know, sort of muck, straw, ideally sort of wood chippings, bark chippings, ideally composted before you put them in there. This can be probably the least expensive way of doing it, and if you know anybody that trims hedges and cuts trees down, they will be more than happy to give you the wood chippings, and just dig them in fresh. There's nothing wrong with you doing that. There is a problem with it, which I'll explain a way around it, but there are plenty of you know, sort of lumberjacks and tree surgeon type people around. If you look in your local Yellow Pages or Look Local or whatever, you will find people, and you can guarantee they'll have lorry load after lorry load of wood chip, and they'll be more than happy to give you some. If you ask them, they'll bring it around and drop it off for you, which is exactly what I do. So what you need to do is dig plenty of this in. Get the soil, dig as deep as you possibly can. If you can dig down to spade depths, and really get it, you know, sort of really get in there and get as much organic material as low as you can, and mix it all in with the soil. And what I would suggest you do is, in the autumn, which is what I've done, put in a load of wood chip, and if you look back through my videos, you'll see I've put a massive pile in down the bottom. Let that rot over the winter, and then again in the spring, before you start putting your plants in, do the same thing again. Ideally, you know, sort of well rotted down, but if you can't get it, fresh is okay. So after you've put that in there, you're increasing the amount of carbon basically that's in there, and you put in larger particles in. There are more expensive ways of doing it. You can dig in sand and you can dig in gravel, but this can be quite expensive. So I would much prefer to pay nothing, or just a few pounds to somebody to drop it off that's trimming trees down and stuff like that, rather than you know, sort of going out and buying great big bulk bags of sand and gravel to, you know, to try and break it up. And to be honest with you, if you put organic material in there, it's actually better for the soil anyway. So the problem with putting fresh wood chippings or bark into the ground is whilst that is breaking down in the soil, it will take all of the nitrogen out of the soil, because basically what you've got is bacteria acting on the wood to break it down, and what this bacteria will do is take the nitrogen out of the soil to break down the wood. So what you need to do is replace the nitrogen. You can do this in a couple of ways. You can either, whilst you're digging in the bark and everything, dig in a load of grass cuttings, because that's very high in nitrogen, and that will replace the nitrogen that the bacteria is about to take to break down. Failing that, get yourself to a coffee shop and get yourself some used coffee grounds, because they're also very high in nitrogen, and that will also replace the nitrogen. So when I was digging that in last time, you'll notice that I didn't only put grass cuttings in, but I also put coffee in as well. And what I was actually doing was replacing the nitrogen in the soil, so the bacteria would have the nitrogen there to break down. And so when I plant in my plants and vegetables in the spring, there'll be plenty of nitrogen left in the ground for them to you know, sort of flourish. One quick note on wood chip: what you don't want is leylandii conifers and stuff like that. You don't want them to put in the ground. They've got a very high content of oil, and they don't break down very quickly, and it's not ideal to put in the ground. What you want is sort of ideally hardwood trees or anything like that. And obviously you don't want stuff that's got holly in or spines in, stuff like that, because you're just going to end up getting spike, you know, your hand spikes and all that stuff every time you go down there to dig. But it's great for controlling slugs, but you know, obviously you want the ground to be usable. So what I would suggest is any sort of wood chippings other than leylandii conifers. You don't want conifers or anything like that, or pine trees. You don't really want to put them in the ground, but anything other than that, as long as there isn't spikes and all sorts on it, then you know, you'll be fine. But even the spikes are fine for the ground. It's just that you're using it with obviously with your hands. As I say, dig in late autumn, get as much in as you can, and then sort of mix it all in with the soil. That'll start to rot down over the winter. Then in the spring again, if you can, get another load, put that in, and sort of break it up as well. And you will find that a lot of these gardeners and sort of tree surgeons and stuff also cut grass for people. So 9 times out of 10, if you're lucky like I am, and you know somebody that does that, they've typically got loads of grass cuttings as well they can give you. So just dig all that in as much as you can, as much organic material as you can. If you can put muck in, straw and stuff like that, that's all good, and that'll all break it up. That will help to break down the clay, and you know, and give you more fibrous soil to work with. There are other ways around it. You can plant things in there that are going to thrive in a sort of clay soil environment, which is sort of like that. Now, things like trees, shrubs, climbers, bulbs will always enjoy the sort of the clay soil, so they will thrive there. So if you have got an area, obviously I want to change it because I'm growing vegetables in there, but if you're growing anything other than vegetables, what you can do is put these plants in there to to raise it. Don't put strawberries, raspberries, you know, sort of roses, soft fruits in these types of grounds, because they will just not survive in those sorts of conditions. The other thing you can do, obviously, is cover it over with plastic and build raised beds there. You know, if your ground is in such a bad state, what you can do is obviously build a raised bed out of some old scaffolding planks, and and sort of build up a raised bed there, and and do it that way. So you're sort of replacing the soil, if you like. The other thing you can do is dig out the clay. Now, this is really hard work. I have done this in the past, to be honest with you. But what you do is you take off as much soil as you can, which is reasonable, and then as soon as you get down into the lower layers where you have got really thick clay, is to dig that clay out, take it down the tip, and then replace that again with organic material. Obviously that will improve it even further, but that is really hard work, to be honest with you. I wouldn't suggest that, because clay is really heavy going, and it's really messy as well, and it doesn't you know, you can be digging for hours and it doesn't seem like you've done anything. But I've known people who have dug out entire areas to to get rid of the clay, and it is hard work, to be honest with you. You know, ideally you want a JCB if you're going to start doing that. But that's Mother Nature Part 5, and these are just some ideas of how you can get rid of sort of clay or heavy soil in your allotment. But basically it's the same as ever. Dig loads of organic material in there, anything you can get your hands on. Wood chippings are really good, muck, things like that. That's really the way to do it. There are other means and ways, but they're a bit more too expensive and stuff. So I hope that's been of some use to you. Okay, so I've had a couple of questions over the last week, and there's been a few comments from different people talking about it, and thank you for all your comments, I do appreciate that. But I just wanted to quickly mention it because I had this problem last year, and I think I've had it in the past, but I haven't had it for quite a few years, but I most certainly had it last year. And if you remember the video that I put out sort of September time last year, it actually showed this problem, which the run of beans that I had along the bottom of the allotment last year, towards the end of the season in the autumn, got covered in this black soot. And if you remember, my arms were absolutely covered in it when I pulled them all down. And I wasn't too concerned about it because I'd already taken all the beans off. The only beans that were left on there were for seed. But I just wanted to just show you all what that is. And basically, it is a fungus which is called sooty mould, and it forms on runner beans. It's not to be confused with what grows on broad beans. That's called chocolate spot. And again, that's a fungus. But it is different to the runner beans. Now you can get it on runner beans, you can also get it on French beans, dwarf beans, stuff like that. So it can affect a number of bean plants, obviously all in the same group. And what it typically follows is when you've had aphids on the beans, and what they will do is they will attack the leaves, the underneath of the leaves, and the stems of the runner beans, and it's typically the top. If you imagine the runner beans are kind of 6 foot tall, 7 foot tall, it's typically the top sort of 2 or 3 foot that gets affected mainly, and that's where the aphids have been. And what the aphids will do is they'll leave this this sort of sticky substance, which is basically the sap out of the plant that they've been feeding on, and this is called honeydew. And they'll leave lots of little spots of this as they're walking around on the plant, and this mould, which is called sooty mould, or at least that's the common name for it, will form on this sap on the leaves. Now it's not dangerous in any way. It won't affect the plant as such. It isn't feeding on the plant. It's feeding on the sap residue which the aphids have left. So you know, if your beans do get this sort of sooty mould forming on the leaves and the beans, don't worry about it. It's not poisonous in any way. What I would recommend is when you've picked the beans off the plant, most certainly give them a good swill. You know, wash them under cold water to get rid of it all. But it's by no means dangerous to anybody. And then just use your beans as normal. If this normally happens in sort of late late summer, autumn time. It can happen in the spring, and if it happens in the spring, that's a real shame, because you know that's when the plants are growing. But I wasn't too concerned about mine because I'd already taken the beans off, as I say. What you can do is spray, make yourself up some water with a little dash of washing up liquid, not too much, and spray the beans with that. That will tend to loosen off the honeydew, the sap off the plant, and then the fungus will come off with it. Hopefully you'll have a bit of rain, and then that'll just wash it all away, so you know, it won't be a problem. You can get this if you haven't had aphids. Now last year I don't think I had aphids on my beans, or at least I didn't see them, and I still got this sooty mould on there. So I don't think it always follows that you have aphids, then you get the sooty mould, but you'll be able to tell it because it's like a black spotty mould, and if you do that with your hands, it'll come off on your hands like a black dust. So if you get it, just all you need to do, the organic way of dealing with it, is just get a little bit of washing up liquid in a say 4 litres of water, and then spray all that on the plants. Underneath, make sure you cover all the surfaces. That will loosen off, that will dissolve the honeydew, and then when you water it again, maybe get the watering hose and just put the sprinkler on it. That will wash all of the mould off the plant, and then that should be the end of it. It always occurs when you get damp, warm conditions. Obviously, any mould will grow in those sorts of conditions. So just watch out for it. If we've had a warm day and a few sun showers, etc., that's the kind of time when you need to start looking to see if it's on your beans. If it is, it's not a particularly massive problem, to be honest with you. But as I say, to get rid of it, just wash it off. And it's typically the top part of the plant that it affects. So I hope that's helped everybody. The second thing is Mother Nature. We were talking about slugs, one of the pests. One thing that I have used in the past, which I forgot to mention, is sawdust. It doesn't help if it rains. If it's a dry period and you're trying to get rid of slugs, if you put sawdust down, fine sawdust, the slugs tend to get covered in that. So that's another way of getting rid of slugs, or at least deterring them. And there is one other question, which was the turnips down the bottom. Sorry, not the turnips. The Swedes down the bottom end. I don't know if you remember, but the leaves got lots of little holes in them. This happened reasonably early on in the season. And thank you to the comments that came through to help me with that. But it's actually the pyrethrum. Sorry, no it isn't. It's the flea moth. And pyrethrum is an insecticide that you can use to kill them. Now, the way to avoid this problem, and I wasn't aware of this till you gave your comments, thank you, and I went on the internet and researched it. I've not had this problem before, but basically what you need to do is they always attack the plant when it's in its early stages, when it's a tender plant. So by getting quick germination, as soon as the plant's established, you'll find that these flea beetles won't attack the plant. So as soon as it hardens off, these flea beetles won't attack. The other way of protecting your plants is by putting some insect mesh over whilst they're in their early stages. That's the that's the other method of doing it. The only other thing that you can do is because the beetles don't like damp conditions too much, wet, sort of wet conditions. They'll always scurry away, where it's dry. So keep your young plants well watered, and avoid sowing the seeds into cold soil. So don't sow too early. Wait till the soil's warmed up. And if you put your hand in the soil and it feels comfortable for your hands to be in the soil, then you know it's warm enough to sow your seeds. Then you're going to get the quick germination, quick growth, and then the plants will mature quickly to the point where the beetles won't, sort of have a go. So that's the way to avoid that. So I'll most certainly be doing that this year. I'll be following at least 2 or 3 of those to make sure I don't get the same problem again. So again, thank you for your comments, everybody, and I will respond to any other questions, but that was just a quick 3 questions that have come through over the last week that I just quickly wanted to no, there's one more. Yes, I've got an apology to make. Rhubarb is not a herb, it's a vegetable. I'm very sorry, and yes, I did hear the little voice in my ear, but rhubarb is not a herb, it's a vegetable. Okay, my name is now cleared. So I hope this episode has been of some use to you. I'm sort of clambering past the trees out to get in the greenhouse. There is more coming, so there's plenty more Mother Nature garden chemistry parts coming up. I'm writing them quicker than I can get them recorded, to be honest with you. So there's going to be plenty more of that coming up, and in the next few weeks I can really see everything warming up and us getting out in the garden. So there's going to be a lot more things kicking off in the garden, to get doing. So there'll be a lot more gardening and a lot less talking very soon. So I'm going to try and rattle through as many of these Mother Natures as I can whilst I've got the time to do it. But I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please do put your comments below. Please subscribe. Thank you for watching Jim's Allotment Garden, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you. Bye bye.